Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, president and founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. Without any further ado, let's get started. Yesterday, we had an opportunity to learn about the definition of ready and how the definition of ready impacted teams and impacted product owners who are trying to prepare. Today, I want to talk to you about the definition of done. Now, definition of done has been talked about a million times, right? So when you're talking about making sure that everything is that you have documentation, that all tests pass, that it's coded, that it's built, right? All the things that you would typically think of for a technical project, right? So it's a pretty standardized set of things that you're looking for. You coded, documented, built, all tests pass, etc. But what about in a distributed environment? Does the definition of done really change for distributed teams? How do we treat the definition of done when we're talking about people who aren't always together? I almost believe that you have to be more detailed than ever before if you're trying to work in an environment where everyone's distributed as opposed to a co-located environment, right? And that'll result in a longer, more detailed definition of done. And I think part of it is just that the ability for teams to communicate information and the ability for them to get that in-person confirmation at what they've done is correct isn't there. So since information is never evenly distributed, so to speak, in a remote setting, this leads to possibilities that people can become confused or that items can become mismanaged or misarranged. So I think that people fall back to, let's create more rules or let's create more guidelines. Let's secure our definition of done. So they start creating this extensive list of criteria that must be met in order for them to move forward, so that it creates confidence in their release. And it allows them to see that working as a distributed team is something that you can do and be successful. You know, I think that when you're working together in one location, being co-located, it helps you see things through a lens that everyone's working together, and that it's more of a formal exposure to how we are building a release process. When you're working remote, it makes you uncomfortable because you can't see what everybody else is doing. And leadership often translates that into you not doing your work, right? And they require stronger confirmation that what you're doing is actually meeting a definition of done. So when you break it all down, my thought is you need to figure out a way to get a more in-depth definition of done that follows criteria based on what you're trying to build. So for different products and services, whether it's hardware or software, technical or non-technical, you're going to have a different definition of done. And I think that if you focus on that definition of done, that's going to help you relieve some of the stress and anxiety that relates to people, not understanding in a remote environment. It'll help increase the quality of your work and your creativity. I think that it could also act as a checklist for new members of the team to validate their work, or for existing members of the team to make sure they didn't miss anything. So, we can use examples of specifying which tests need to be run, or reminding members to put things in proper directories, or, there's just so many things you can do to give those team members the boost that they need so that they feel like they are achieving great things, right? So, I think that part of this is encouraging the teams to understand that, hey, definition of done is not something to hold against you or to harm you. Definition of done is a way that we can bolster the work to make sure that we avoid rework so we can get things out the first time correctly. I think that if you surveyed a number of teams, that you'd find that most teams have rituals or practices that provide some visual cues to everyone around them about where they are and what's going on. But when teams are remote, all those cues and all those things that you had before are gone. They're out of the window. So I think it's one of these things where you have to make sure you understand exactly what you should be doing or could be doing in order for you to have success when it comes to the definition of done. If it's important for you to understand what the output criteria is, obviously it's important for you to understand the definition of ready too, so that items can be ready to enter into a backlog to be approached and worked on by the team. So I feel like there's a double thing here that we're talking about, right? And these two do go hand in hand, and maybe that's why I chose to do them back to back. But I think that I can say with confidence that more and more organizations are starting to get used to this whole let's have people work in a distributed environment thing. And they're starting to realize that team members are going to be responsible, that their definition of done is going to be solid, and that they're going to learn new and creative and innovative ways to help them be successful so that they can have a solid definition of done, even in a remote environment. It's just so important for us to not have it be an ongoing thing that never gets completed. We need to get to the point where we can say we're done. Well, I hope that information was helpful to you. I hope you found this episode really something that you could use. We encourage you, as always, to visit agiledad.com, where you can learn more about this topic and many other topics. We got lots of good stuff out there, lots of exciting things. If you have an idea for something you want on the podcast, send it over. Learn more at agiledad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.